Hello, everyone. I don't have any intro music, and this is my first ever attempt at this, so it might be horrible. But, anyways, my name is Nick, and this is, I guess, going to be called KBLSN. I think that's the name I've decided for it. And I'm glad that you're here, and I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, so today is Thursday, September 10th, and I am going to have three main sections of this show. I guess podcast or whatever I intend to call it. The first part is going to be on the NFL, which starts today with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans, and then about the Toronto Raptors and sort of the rest of the NBA as it's playing out in the playoffs. And then finally, I will cover my thoughts on the LEC and LCS championships that were this weekend. All right, and starting with the NFL, tonight the Texans and the Chiefs square off as the first game of the NFL season, and it seems like it has been forever, especially without the preseason games. But I really think that based solely upon the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are bringing back so much of their team, I have to give their matchup to them tonight. Now, the spread is 9.5 points for the Chiefs. This is a tricky one because the Chiefs always can score in crazy amounts, as was in the AFC Championship last year when the Texans were up 21-0 and, lost by like 20-something. So I think it's definitely something that can happen. I almost would – actually, I do kind of like the line on that one. I just think, Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, all of them – just going to be very excited to come back. And honestly, the Deshaun Watson, while he got paid, he did lose the best receiver that he had. And aside from Will Fuller, I think he's got quite a lot in terms of maybe getting on the same page with receivers, and they will probably look like a better team in January than they do right now in September. The next game to cover is the Seattle Seahawks versus the Atlanta Falcons. I'm really high on the Seahawks this season, but that might just because I really like Jamal Adams. But Russell Wilson, I think if he's on the team, it doesn't really matter. He's like one of those guys that can carry up the whole team. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are returning, and as of now, Will Dissly is healthy. So I think I'm leaning Seahawks in this game. Next up is the Jets and the Bills. The Bills, I think, are going to come out swinging. They have a pretty consistent core from last year, and I don't think the Jets are quite there yet to make the next step forward. I could be proven wrong. Sam Darnold could come out, but I think as it stands, Josh Allen is a little bit farther ahead in his development, and he has some better weapons, especially since the Jets lost Robbie Anderson. Moving on to the Bears and the Lions. I think a lot of people are really high on the Lions, and I would sort of agree, as Kenny Golladay, Matthew Stafford are all coming back, and they just recently added Adrian Peterson, who I think will go along great with Kerryon Johnson. The Bears' offense is, to put it lightly, confusing and complicated. I feel like they have the ability to turn into like a deke and dunk style for Mitch Trubisky, or can start to air it out more with Nick Foles. But I don't really know which direction they're going to go, so for that, I have to give it to the Lions. Next one will be actually, I think, a very consequential game for the NFC North, which is the Packers and the Vikings. I think the Packers, their team strategy is confusing because they drafted this year like they're in a rebuild by drafting A.J. Dillon and Jordan Love, while having Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones is going to be a free agent next year, but the A.J. Dillon pick, especially to me, seemed way too early for a running back when there were several receivers, and that is a major position of need for the Packers. And even if you were rebuilding, you would think that you would want wide receiver talent there as well. The Vikings, while losing Stephon Diggs, I think will be fine. And I have them winning in this one. I think that Yannick Ngakoue will make a superb impact almost immediately, since he won't be really asked to do a lot in the run-stopping department. And I think that the Packers lost a few too many pieces for them to continue on and didn't add enough in terms of offense. The next game is between the Dolphins and the Patriots, and I actually have a surprise pick here. I actually think the Dolphins will win this. I know that Cam Newton is healthy and he's probably going to go on a tear, but I really like the Dolphins' pieces so far. And even though they're using Ryan Fitzpatrick and not Tua Tagovailoa yet, I still think they have an edge in here. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick has a few magical games, and Preston Williams is on a great track as well. So I think I give it to them. Next up is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington football team. I think this is an easy win for the Eagles. While Washington does have a beefed up offensive line and has basically turned into the Washington Crimson Tide with all of their Alabama players, especially on defense, I don't see their offense doing well. Even with Dwayne Haskins taking over officially now, he has Terry McLaurin, but I don't think that Antoine Gibson will completely know all of the pass blocking assignments quite yet, because he is just a rookie. I think he'll have a great game on the ground, but I don't think that the passing offense will be as complete as it will be towards the end of the year. And I think the Eagles have quite a mature team. It really does depend, I guess, upon what version of Carson Wentz we see, if it's the MVP Carson or if it's the fumble-happy Carson that some people seem to know more because of the struggles of last year. But right now I have Philadelphia winning pretty easily. The next game is between the Raiders and the Panthers. The Panthers are sort of lost, I think, in terms of their development. I think even with Matt Rule coming in and having a very successful season at Baylor, that they just need a little bit more time to gel together. Both teams are probably not going to turn the ball over or attempt any major big throws downfield, so this one might be a boring one, but I have the Raiders winning very closely. Next up is the Colts and the Jaguars. I think the Colts are potentially the third or fourth best team in the AFC, and the Jaguars might be the worst team in the NFL. Strictly on paper, losing your best players is never a good strategy, I don't think, if you're not going to get anything in return for them. So the Fournette decision is kind of baffling to me, and you would almost want a strong running game since you know your passing game is not going to be very effective this year. So I have the Colts winning in this one pretty easily. The next game is between the Browns and the Ravens. The Browns shocked the Ravens early in last season, and I think that might light a fire under them, and they might decide, this is when we step up and show that last year was completely a fluke. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens usually start out very hot in the first game of the year. I can distinctly remember the Dolphins game of last year. So I think because of that and some of the stuff that we've been seeing out of training camp, I'd see the Ravens cruising in this one. Next up is the Chargers and the Bengals. I think right now Tyrod Taylor is starting for the Chargers. And I think just based on experience of him versus Burrow being a rookie, that the experience will win in this one. I think it'll be close because I think the Chargers are already beat up, and losing Derwin James is a big piece to confuse a young rookie quarterback. So I think they might play a little bit more base and be a little bit easier to read for Burrow. He might shock everybody. He was great last year at LSU, so you never know. He might just be like one of those players who makes the transition easily, especially since his metrics when he was under pressure were so good. So I have a lot of high hopes for him, but I don't know if it will be a slow rookie start as it usually is in the NFL, it seems. Okay, and moving on to the Buccaneers and the Saints game, which is the one that I think almost everyone is most looking forward to because Tampa Bay had one of the more active off seasons, while the Saints really did a good job of keeping their core together. It's been a while since we've seen Brady and Gronk play, and I think that will be really interesting, especially since I think they're going to run a lot of 21 in this game, so they can use O.J. Howard as well. So I actually see O.J. Howard having a pretty solid game as well as Gronk. Not having Mike Evans, though, potentially is, I think, what will push the Saints forward, even though there's going to be no home field advantage. So this, I think, works out really well for the Bucs. I just don't see there being a chance where the Bucs can do this because they're just brand new together and having no preseason. I know they've been practicing together, but I don't think it's the same thing as an experienced Saints team that's had a lot of the core pieces together for a really long time. And then the other afternoon game is between the Cardinals and the 49ers. I actually am really, really high on the Cardinals. I follow Cliff Kingsbury a lot in college, and I think that his offense works really, really well with Kyler Murray, and I think that he's been able to bring a run offense with, especially with Kenyon Drake, that is it's almost sneaky good. I think that people underrate it a lot. I really like the weapons that the Cardinals have, and I think Kyler is going to have a potential MVP type of season. I think this is where he can start it. I mean, that San Francisco 49ers defense, that was really, really good. I think it was best in the league last year. So I don't really see them slowing down. But right now I actually do have a slight favor on the Cardinals because I think they built their entire defense around stopping the zone run. And that's sort of the bread and butter of San Francisco. And if they can force Jimmy G to throw it more, then I think between Budda Baker and Isaiah Simmons, with his new addition, I think that they have a shot. So I know the line is at 7 for the 49ers, but I really think that the Cardinals might be able to surprise some people and take this one. And the last game of Sunday, the 13th, is between the Cowboys and the Rams. I think that Dallas's new offense is going to work super, super well with the addition of CeeDee Lamb. Just having your offensive line get healthy again. Obviously, they did lose Travis Frederick, so that is a big disappointment. But in terms of the Rams, aside from Jalen Ramsey becoming the highest paid non-quarterback player, I don't think they added enough on offense. I think that the running back situation is kind of a big issue. I mean, no, they don't have Gurley, so it won't be as prominent. But just not having a true number one might slow the team down, and it just might be some learning curves and adjustments. Right now, I have the Cowboys winning this one. And then, of course, because it's first week, that there's going to be 2 Monday night games. The first one between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers as my number 3 or even possibly number 2 team in the AFC, so I think that they will win this one pretty easily. I think that Big Ben is going to show that his injury is not going to slow him down in the future, and that he is basically here to prove that he should be in the Hall of Fame, and he'll make one last run at this Super Bowl. And then finally, between the Titans and the Broncos, the Broncos just lost Von Miller, which I think will be the nail in the coffin for this team. I don't think that they have the defensive support staff to overcome an issue like that. I mean, Bradley Chubb's numbers were really good at one point in time because he had Von Miller on the other side, and now he won't. So, I mean, I look for Chubb to take another step forward in his career, but I just don't see it without having Von. And I guess finally, because it is the first week of the NFL season, that I should make some sort of Super Bowl prediction. I know a lot of people are really high in the NFC on a few different teams, and I think it's a little bit more wide open. I think because of the bad luck, I'm not going to choose the Saints. I just think for some reason they just can't get it done, and I worry about Breeze's arm down the stretch. I think the Bucs are a really interesting choice, but I think overall that the 49ers will be the team to represent the NFC because of their ability to run the ball, and have basically control the offense and put Jimmy G in a lot of spots where he doesn't have to win it by himself. And I think on the AFC side, I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to choose the Baltimore Ravens. I see the Chiefs as being a target number 1 in all of the games this season, and I think that one defensive coach may figure them out, and that's why I think that the Ravens are going to be the ones to move forward. I think even if you have a good game plan, if the team doesn't have bad luck, then I think they have a better shot, just because I think coaches are going to sell out and trying to figure out this Kansas City offense. Whether or not they'll be successful is still up in the air, but for right now I have the Super Bowl matchup being the 49ers versus the Ravens, and I actually have the Ravens winning it. So I think that is where I stand on that. I hope this prediction comes true, but you never know. And quickly, we're going to move on to the NBA. So last night, the Toronto Raptors played the Boston Celtics in a Game 6 that went to 2 overtimes, and Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby just played so well. And now we're going to Game 7. I just was so excited for the Raptors because I think that they are still underrated. I think finally Nick Nurse is getting the proper attention that he deserves. But I'm just really, really looking forward to Game 7. I do wonder if Kemba Walker can get back on track since he seemed to really struggle. But I think between just the matchups with Brown and Tatum and Kemba and Tice going up against like the Toronto core is super fun to watch. And I'm really excited that the NBA is producing really good matchups. I think in general, I still think that the Raptors will come out of the East, which I think it's going to be between them or the Heat. I think the Heat having all this time off is either going to do really well or really bad since like they're a younger team, but I think Jimmy Butler is going to keep them focused in general. But I do wonder if the Heat are just going to get a little complacent because they just took out the Bucks and it was like this big thing. And then I think on the west side that it's still between the Lakers and the Clippers, and I hope that we get really good series out of that because honestly, the series between Denver and the Clippers and Houston and the Lakers has kind of been really bad. Like I don't think that anyone has given Houston or Denver a proper chance like mentally into saying that like these teams can make it. So I think just with that sentiment that the teams like the games aren't as fun to watch because if everyone is like in agreement that oh yeah these two teams are going to move on, then it becomes less fun. Especially since my team, the Dallas Mavericks, is out. Like I think I need this storyline or something to keep me interested and keep me watching, and that's just not something that I have seen with either of those two series. And I expect them to end sort of like the Milwaukee Heat and Miami series went, which is just it's going to be 4-1 to the better team. And finally, the last topics that I want to talk about today are the LEC and the LCS championships. Both, I think, were very exciting weekends. I think that the Rogue G2 series was, well, all the TSM series were good, but I think the Rogue G2 series was something that we can like expect to the level of play in Worlds, and I think that G2 has just put themselves into the number one spot in Europe once again, even though they came in and everyone was doubting them. Just a combination of like Jankos, Caps, Perks, all of them just played so well together. I did have a little bit more hopes that Fnatic would give a better series, but I think that having played the day before, that G2 was just a little bit more focused, and I think that having the delay or maybe not thinking that they were going to play, like, and you had to play a best of 5 series just after you had just the week before played a best of 5, I think that Fnatic just got themselves a little bit caught out on that, and I think that G2 having day 1 against Rogue to clean up some of the mechanical issues seemed to really pay off because it just seemed like that Fnatic was a step behind in that whole series. As for the LCS side, I think TSM is just playing at an exceptional level for them personally. Whether it's with Double Lift or Broken Blade, I think Biofrost even really stepped up his game. Bjergsen has always been playing very, very exceptionally, so I think that him doing well was not something that we didn't expect. Going into Worlds with this team, I think they learned what type of champions that they need to put Broken Blade and Spica on. I think that their picks are definitely things that they need to prioritize. And just seeing Broken Blade on like carry champs that not necessarily are tanks seems to be the way to go for him. I think that he's able to move around the map much easier. And if that pigeonholes Spica or not, I think it remains to be seen because he obviously had to play more of a tank role in that position. And I think that Double Lift and Bjergsen's ability to play multiple champions very, very well sort of allows you the ability to pick for them last. I think that forever now that Senna will be banned for Double Lift, so I'm really kind of worried about that as they move forward, and I think that Bjergsen, just his champion pool is so wide. I mean, adding the Zillion and being so resilient and strong on it has definitely given them a lot of flexibility, because if other teams had to ban away the Zillion, then that's like a wasted ban that they can add. The TSM has an ability to pick for a different champion for, let's say, Broken Blade. I think that like that really opens it up. It means that like the Camille or the Aurelia will almost always be open, just because you have to ban so much on Bjergsen and double side that you can get the champions that you want on Broken Blade. I think moving forward that it can be kind of challenging, especially against some of the LPL and LCK teams that like to play carry champs, but I think so far that they'll play really well. As for Team Liquid, I think that some of the issues in communication will be resolved. It seemed a little bit different for them to be so. I think they just struggled too with the long series. I think the TSM having so much experience, especially in the Golden Guardian side series, where they went to Game 5, that even with Spica and Broken Blade, who maybe haven't played in that many championships and playoff series, that they were able to gain a lot of experience from that, and that's what carried them forward. I think that Tactical and Core JJ work exceptionally well. I love Broxa in the jungle. Impact, I think, is still a solid top laner, and so is Jensen. On the FlyQuest side, I think once again they're showing that they can play a lot of roles, and they're very patient, and I look to have them maybe struggle against the LPL teams who might play an aggressive style against them, but because they are the number 2 seed, I think that'll give them a little bit more time to get used to the types of things that they'll be seeing. And I really look for them to have a solid Worlds. I don't think any of the LCS teams will get out of groups just because of how strong, once again, that China and Korea are. Especially when you look at like top esports or Damwon, I think are really, really strong. And then if you don't have that, then you have G2, who are just on top of their game right now. I think Rogue's ability to play, at least in the macro, I think is really good. So I look for it to be an interesting series, interesting Worlds, and I think the draw is on September 15th at 7 a.m. if you're in Central Time in the United States. So not the most favorable time for people who like to stay up at night like me, but that's all right. I am looking forward to Worlds, and I think that it'll be quite fun and exciting. And so that is going to be all that I wanted to talk about today. I would like to thank you for joining me, and hopefully I will post another one of these soon, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Okay, goodbye.